David, how's it going today, brother?
Hey, I'm great. Glad to be here with you.
David, man, you seem like you do a lot of different things. You have this obviously important part of your life, the singing portion, but there's also a lot of business in the background. So why don't you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and what you've been up to over the last handful of years.
Yeah. So, like a lot of people, I moved to Nashville for music. I was a vocal major at Belmont, and and still do a lot of performing and recording. And in fact, this last year, I released "Open Arms" by Journey, but I did it in Italian and English, and pretty excited about that. Yeah, I've been running my own company now for about 10 years. I've been self-employed for about 7 years.
Okay.
And yeah, we live in just actually on the north side of town in Hendersonville. My wife and I, Lisa, have been married for 27 years. We got two adult children now. They're both in college, or actually one just graduated. And yeah, so I have a bunch of different irons in the fire, right? I have a product in Home Depot and Lowe's. I just licensed a new version of my thermostat guard to Linux, and I am developing three homes right now in Gallatin, Tennessee. We're scraping a lot and building three houses. Done a little bit of that over the last few years. I lead a mastermind group within the ISI Mastermind. Been a part of that group for about 7 years, and yeah, I'm writing a book. I think I think sometimes do I wonder if I have a short attention span or I just
I
have a
think that that's something that
wide.
all entrepreneurs have sort of a short attention span. It's like this
Yeah,
superpower. You feel like I've done it, I can do it again. And trust me, I'm right there with you. But usually it's restraint that is the important part as an entrepreneur
yeah,
to try not to do everything because then you end up doing kind of nothing.
yeah. It's funny you say that. It's a neat kind of a turn of events here in the last, I guess, 4 months. My product is, I licensed it to somebody, so I don't really, handle that any longer, and I just kind of focus on marketing some big sales. So I've got some time on my hands. So my next venture is I just partnered with a company that called Strategy Simple that we can and we do intent based data, so we can pull up anybody who searched for anything yesterday in any zip code, and we've got a lot of information, so we can retarget them on Facebook and all that kind of thing. And
Mm,
I'm pretty excited about that this next chapter with the strategy too. So yeah.
mm. Well, take me back to the beginning. How does this all start? You go to school for music, and clearly that does become a big part of your life. But maybe talk me through kind of how this progresses.
Yeah. So I grew up in a little town in Minnesota, Glenwood, and I was just up there this last weekend. And by the way, it was 12 degrees below zero.
Yeah, I was gonna say you
That's
picked the wrong time to
pretty
go
wild.
visit.
Yeah. Um, anyway, yeah, my parents still live there. My siblings and their families all live here. But we grew up in a musical family. My mom was a music teacher, and I jokingly tell people sometimes that we were forced to sing when we were little.
Hmm.
And it just kind of took. And my older siblings, I'm the youngest of three. They kind of made it cool, and I had a lot of great influences, growing up, and realized in my early teen years that I can do this, and I'm better than average, that kind of thing. And
Hmm.
it became an instant, kind of a social scene for really kind of for the most part. I mean, I like music like anybody else, but for me, it was really a people driven type of an endeavor, and got me, around a lot of fun people, kind of the same experience here in Nashville. And but what's interesting back then? So both of my parents owned businesses. My dad had a metal fab shop and did all kinds of custom work, and my mom, of course, taught music in a private studio. And I saw what it looked like to run a business, but I was really drawn to the people that kind of had multiple revenue streams, and seemed to have a bit more margin in their time, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But I didn't know what that would be for me, right? I kind of had to launch out into life and do some stuff and kind of grow and mature and so on. And um, long story short, I was working for Verizon Wireless in their facilities management group. So I, basically covered, a few states and that kind of thing. And It's a great job. I was there for 14 years, and it was flexible. And but the funny thing is, my brother-in-law called me one day, and he said, "Hey, Osk, where do I get a thermostat guard with a combination lock?" And of course, in our Verizon stores, and you see them in restaurants and hotels, the little box that goes over a thermostat so people don't jack around with it.
Mm.
We used them, of course, but the problem is everybody had a hard time keeping up with that tiny key. So when he called me about a stat guard with a combo lock, I thought, well, there's an idea.
Oh, when
So
just one
yeah,
second for
yeah,
those kind of listening, because I had to kind of look this up. What you're
yeah,
referring to? It's like those plastic little boxes that kind of go over like a public facing building's thermostat,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's just got a little like a very small key, a silver key lock on the top. Yeah.
yeah. And that's my competitor's. Mine has a combo lock, but it's so yeah, we were the first in the world to develop that, and I ended up buying him out, and then fortuitously got into Home Depot a year later, and Lowe's about 2.5 years ago with a different variation, and then and so on. So you know, I think you mentioned it. You get a couple of wins, and you're like, well, heck, what else is possible? And I started hanging out with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and the world kind of opened up a little bit. So yeah,
Mm. Yeah, it's a funny experience when you start to see and experience people who are like far and away more successful than either you are or you thought was possible.
right,
Literally, the last guy on the podcast I just had, crazy story. He was like 21 and like a high performing college student, and he went through this like 40,000 person job interview and was one of like, I don't know, 20 people they hired. And his
okay,
job was to travel the world with high profile executives and do like travel planning with them. So he
that's
would
awesome.
like, he's like, I was like, I thought I was going to get a good job, working at like Procter and Gamble or something. I was hoping I could make like 100 grand. That would be amazing for me. And he's like, I get this job and I'm like with Bill Gates and Michael Dell. And these guys are
Yeah,
like literal billionaires. And he's just like, his mind's just blown. So I
yeah,
thought that was a funny story about like just the scale and scope of the world sometimes when it opens up to you. So, so,
yeah.
so your brother kind of just makes mention of this as like an aside, like, like he's looking for a thing and you start looking around, you can't find it. And you're like, I'm just the right person to do this. Is that kind of how that story went?
Yeah, he's. I think he did a little bit of work, even before, but he knew that I was kind of in that arena, and he's like, he'll find one, and so we kind of batted it around a little bit, and then I helped him kind of design it, and he kind of did a lot of that. I came up with the name, and then I focused on the sales, and it's funny we that phrase, if you build it, they will come.
Mm-hmm.
We thought that was true, like everybody else,
Ah,
right?
right, right.
All of a sudden, we take our life savings and we've got 7,000 units sitting in a garage and nobody wants them.
Where did you manufacture those in US
So
or?
no, sadly, we tried to, right? I mean, but everybody else had their plastic made in China, so we just couldn't even compete. It was 3 times as expensive to have it made here, so
Yeah,
we just had to go over there. But
I have had that same experience. I'll tell you as we kind of keep talking. I actually have
yeah,
a patent for a product that I'm kind of I'm sort of as a side project. You talk about side projects. This is like a side project.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm sort of trying to bring this thing to life, but it's a glassware product, and there's just like almost no glassware made in the United States, like at all.
right,
Like if you
yeah,
have dishes or cups or plates in your house, it probably doesn't say where it's manufactured, but I can almost promise you it is not manufactured in the United States. Like
right,
windshields for like airplanes and like spaceships is made in the United States. Everything else is made overseas.
yeah, yeah. It is. It's yeah, we're probably going to start doing some stuff in South America too. Just we've got two different sources, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's when he called that day, I thought we got that spark, and I'm like, well, here's something, and it just started to grow, so we just figured out plastics injection molding and prototyping, and just like anybody else, right? That's you just put your head down and keep going and start adding up all the steps that are needed.
I thought you were going to say adding up all the costs that are going into this
Oh,
thing
that
and
yeah,
going, well, wait a minute, are we ever going to be able to sell this thing? So like
yeah.
what consumer research did you do, or like did you do research to think like this is a good idea, or was it just like it feels like a good idea?
Yeah, it was more of it was just feels like a good idea. Of course, we you walk into any hardware store, small or large, they sell thermostat guards. But
Mm.
I knew full well that, that, I mean, we lost the key at every single store, in every single, Verizon store, whatever. I mean, it was every quarter we'd have to replace the thermostat guards, rip it off the wall, fix the wall, paint the wall. So I knew it was a
Jeez.
big enough problem. And you know what else? We didn't really have to. It's a better mousetrap. So we knew we were making something just a better that was already selling. And it's like when you walk in to buy a padlock, you can choose a combo lock or one of the key.
Mm.
So it's, we knew full well, either we sell them by volume, or we just sell them, online or whatever, and, direct, that kind of thing. We knew they would sell, but
Mm.
we didn't know it, volume. And of course, we realized rather quickly that if you're going to have more than a hobby, you need volume. So,
Yeah.
that's why we were just absolutely thrilled to, work with Home Depot initially, and then Lowe's.
So you find a manufacturer overseas, you commit, you buy these things, they arrive what, at your house or your garage?
Yeah, my brother-in-law actually had a garage, and so we loaded them up and had, I don't know, it was like 7 pallets of stat guards in there.
You said that
And
minimum order was 7,000?
yeah, yeah.
That's not a low minimum order. I don't know what the cost of the product was. I'm hoping it wasn't that high, but that's still not like a small
Oh no,
investment.
it was tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, for
I mean,
sure.
and that was a scary, yeah, it was a scary amount of money, because we had 25,000 just in the mold. And
25,000 in the mold. Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Wow, that's like that mold better work.
you darn right, yeah, yeah.
It's
So
funny
it was
because it seems like glass molds, I really don't know how this works, but apparently glass molds are not nearly as expensive. They're like 400 bucks, 500 bucks, 800 bucks.
really,
So that's good for me, I
wow,
guess, because
yeah,
I can do more testing with this product. Um, but I don't know if they last as long or what. I'm not sure exactly the whole process yet. Um,
yeah. I want to hear more about that product, by the way. That sounds exciting.
well, let's finish out this story. So
Yeah,
you commit, you buy the mold. The mold's 25,000, and then let's just say simple math. They're $5 a pop times 7,000. There's another 35,000. So you're what, 60 grand in.
yeah, yeah.
That's
It was,
that's not that's not really a side hobby. That's pretty serious when you're doing that.
oh yeah, yeah. We were all in, and it was more than that actually, with just the prototyping costs and everything, shipping and the whole 9 yards. Right.
Yeah.
By the time we got those things landed, yeah, it was a lot of money. And of course, my wife is like, okay, now what? And part of it was, we just thought the doors would open. We had a lot of assumptions. We thought the doors would open a little bit quicker, that kind of stuff. We didn't know retail. I didn't know any of this.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, that's
um,
also kind of like a fractured market, right? Like there's not. I mean, there's Home Depot and Lowe's, but they're probably not immediately going to pick you up. They're going to be like, "You guys have
no,
zero sales. Like, I don't care if this product looks good. Like, you
yeah,
guys haven't proven your ability to like be a company, let alone be a
yeah,
supplier for Home Depot." And then after
yeah,
that, it's like, who's left? Like True Value, Ace, like,
yeah, yeah.
um,
In fact, we actually had a really great call with Ace about a month ago, and we're hoping to get into some of their stores maybe toward the end of the year.
mm-hmm. Heck yeah.
They've got, I think, 6 or 8 thousand stores.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're big for sure.
Wow.
So like how are you like going about retail? And this was probably what year? Because e-commerce maybe not as
Wow.
big.
So this was 2017, I
Okay.
think, is when we actually got on HomeDepot.com, and then they started testing us in some stores and so on.
Okay. So
Uh,
online is still big, but it has continued to go up into the right.
yes, yes.
Yeah. So did you launch direct to customers then at that point in time, or were you
Um,
just kind of seeking that retail business?
yeah, no, we were like, well, do we go to the wholesale, kind of the pro channel and supply houses and things like that first? And truth of the matter is, I'm realizing now why, but at the time we just didn't get much response. Like it was,
Mm,
we would call some of the supply houses, and we didn't understand that they have master distributors and then distributors, and
mm,
it's a big machine that handles all of that. And
yeah.
again, we just didn't know any different, so we just started cold calling and trying to put the pieces together and that kind of thing, and then realized that's going to be a much tougher channel to grow in. and because you've got to kind of create, you've got to create some demand out there so that
Yeah.
the HVAC techs who go to Ferguson and Johnstone and those locations are asking for it.
Mm.
So it's a much longer, harder play there. And whereas retail, someone is in their restaurant and they're like, "Who in the heck touched the thermostat again?" I just got a 300 or $900 power bill or whatever. They're going to get in the car and drive down to Lowe's or Home Depot and just buy one.
Mm.
And it's a felt problem, or they're going to go on their phone and search, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, how do I prevent people from touching my thermostat?
Mm.
That kind of thing. So it's a much quicker play. And of course, it's we thought, well, if we make one sale, to one store who has 2,000 stores, well, that's a much better way to 10x, right?
Yeah.
And so it was funny because we fooled around for, I don't know, maybe a year, and then I ended up buying my brother-in-law out, and then I thought, you know what, go big or go home. That's kind of how I live my life. Why am I being such a chicken? And so we, started knocking on their door, and it's funny, by the way, of course, Home Depot, they want to know that you have a good product, right? But more than that, they want to know, can you do business with us?
Mm-hmm.
Can you stock the shelves one time, and can you keep 30 or 40,000 units sitting around?
Whew.
Do you understand supply chain? And can you handle just the entire back end of retail?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I couldn't do any of that.
Mm.
And so when they called, and when I finally got a meeting and they called and said, we would like to put you in, at the time, 1,300 of the 2,200 stores. I'm literally sitting on the tarmac in Nashville, flying out to do a concert. And they called, and I'm like, I just sat in my chair, so I'm like, well, I'll answer it. We're not taking off for 10 minutes. And the guy says, "Hey, David, we just love this product." He said, "We'd like to put you in 1,300 stores. Can you do that?" Well, of course, like Richard Branson says, right? Say yes and figure it out. Like I've
Yeah.
done the whole
Well,
time.
well, you're not going to say, no, I can't do that. Obviously. That's
Yeah,
entrepreneurship 101 right there.
yeah, yeah. So I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And of course, I hung up and panicked. And I'm like, well, here's another hill to climb. And we ended up finding a partner, licensed it, to them. So they technically are the vendor of record with HD and Lowe's, and but they've been a great partner. We're working on other products and all kinds of stuff.
So what's the function of that partner? Is it capital? Is it scale?
Yeah, both end. So they take care of all the production and handle shipping, the whole 9 yards. And so I'm just focusing on the sales, and I get a royalty.
Interesting. So, how quickly does Home Depot want to start stocking this product when they say this? Because it sounds like you had to do like kind of a lot of work to find this
Yeah, there was
partner. I'm sure there was, agreements and lawyers and stuff like that.
yep, yep. It was probably 6 months before we hit the shelf.
That's
So
still pretty fast though to do all that process in between that
yeah,
time.
yeah. So fortunately, the company that I licensed had 4 or 5 products already in there, so they were already a vendor. They knew the process, they knew the team, so they could walk through that rather quickly.
Mm.
But we still had to cross the T's, and then get it sourced again to get our costs down, and and make sure that the box was correct and all the nomenclature and all the various things they require for the shelf. And so it was, yeah, it was a bit of a process, but I tell you, after screwing around for 4 years and trying to figure it out, and walking into Home Depot, that morning I first saw it, there was one, just was an unbelievable experience.
Mm. So how did you end up finding that company? Because it sounds like they had a big part in this. Like, what do you even Google? Like, company, Home Depot, license, royalties,
Yeah. So,
manufacturing.
well, it was interesting because, yeah, so it's funny. I kind of forgot about this. So I'm sitting on the tarmac. I say yes. 5 minutes later, the phone rings again, and the buyer says, "Hey, just wanted to see, we have certain partners out there, and I can give you some names if you're interested. Who could help you with." They didn't say licensing; they just said help you with the retail end of it. So they have different models on how they do this. Meaning, I could just sell my product to them, then they could sell it to HD and do whatever, handle it, right?
Interesting. Huh.
So anyway, so yeah, so I made a few calls, and I mean, immediately I knew. After, it was really the first company that I called. I knew these were the guys. Like they just just two partners that are running a really lean and mean ship. You know, really a
Mm,
couple of hustlers, and um, yeah, it's been great.
that's a fascinating business in and of itself that they have. So that's it's almost exactly how we work with Amazon. We'll buy the product from you at wholesale, mark it up, and sell it through the Amazon channel at retail. Amazon
Sure.
never owns the product; we still own it, but we're sort of doing everything that it takes to be successful on that channel. It kind of sounds almost
Right.
exactly like what they're doing with you.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Yeah.
Hmm, interesting. So what's it like working with Home Depot? I know you have kind of a buffer in between you and Home Depot with them and their team, but what's it like getting a product into Home Depot, and what are the requirements they're kind of asking for that people aren't thinking about? Do they have any means testing to say like, "Hey, David, like you're this can't be 99% of your business," because I know that's how Costco works. I think they'll bend the rules a little bit because they get it. Like if you get into Costco, it's going to be the biggest channel. Like you can't have another channel as big as them, but
Yeah.
they don't want Costco to be like, I don't know, it's some like pretty high number. Like they don't want it to be more than like 30 or 40% of your business. I think that it ends
Mm.
up being for a lot of customers. But basically they don't want to have the responsibility of keeping you in business if something was to change at Costco.
Sure, sure. Yeah. And, you know, so, I mean, that's a really interesting question. I've never been asked that. So the fact of the matter is since I was not the one being onboarded and my partner was, I don't really know. That's a great question. You know, from the outside looking in, we have regular calls and, you know, updates. Once in a while, I'll be on a call with the team, just with, you know, with my guys. But, you know, a lot of that stuff doesn't come up. I mean, I from what, as far as, you know, the all the details, I guess that's really between them and my partner, and I, you know, they kind of handle it. So we,
Mm,
you know, I get involved if they're, you know, if they're wanting to try something, you know, different online, some marketing, you know, whether it's updates on their Facebook, I mean, sorry, on their website,
mm.
or they want to change to a box or something like that, right? It's, you know, I'll get involved that way. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you know, both HD and Lowe's have been just great to work with.
Mm. So I assume you got patent protection on this product?
Yeah, we would patent and trademark.
Yeah. What was that? Was that straightforward to get the patent, or
Yeah,
was it a
yeah, it was no big.
challenge?
No, it was really no big deal. I've got a patent attorney here in Nashville who's just awesome. He did my trademark and patent, and you know, took a little time and some money, of course, but yeah, it was really not a big deal.
Did they deny you the first 1 or 2 times like they always attempt to do, or did you actually
No,
get it through?
I got it through.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Because that's what I've been told about the patent, and that's what happened with my product,
Okay.
is they denied it the first time, and then they cite, these various different things, which can be just extremely different, right?
Yeah.
For a product like yours, it could be something so totally different. Like it's like, well, this has a lock, but it's not for the same use case. But they go, well, you could use that as like prior art or prior reference. So they denied mine, and then came back. We provided our information. They denied it again, and then my patent attorney was like, Alex, I think kind of like my 2 cents is we should probably abandon this. Like, you can
Mm,
keep paying us, but we're too in, and like usually they don't change their tune. Well, the other lawyer was like, well, I actually kind of have a different opinion. I think that maybe we aren't that far off, so let's try one more time. So we try one more time, and then my patent lawyer says like, hey, this never happens, but basically the patent examiner said, hey, if you make this one change, I'll approve it. And he's like, that doesn't happen. They're not supposed to really like tell you, I
right.
will approve it if you do this thing, because like their job is to like tell you all the reasons it cannot be approved, not like here's
Yeah,
how to get it pushed through.
right.
So
Right.
so it got pushed through, and
Wow, that's great. Wow.
yeah. So my product is an all glass food storage container. So
Okay.
um, basically one of the big things that people are trying to do is avoid plastics, like, especially
Right.
microplastics, right? Like I'm drinking a Gatorade. That's really not something you're supposed to be doing, right? Um, you're supposed to avoid plastics, and especially avoid heating plastics with your food. And I
Right.
was looking for Tupperware that doesn't have plastic, right? So you have the glass bottom, but you don't really have anything that has a glass lid. So I have
Yeah.
like a sort of interlocking glass bowl system. It's not really that system is, a fancy way of saying
Yeah.
it. It's
Great.
a glass bowl and a glass lid. But now I'm kind of like doing this with my free time and, pushing through the manufacturing in China and figuring it out. But I'm kind of right there with you. So I'm interested, like
Cool, way to go.
yeah. So it sounds like for you though, you got demand before you got any sort of like interest from companies who help you out with the process, because that's like the dream of an inventor, right? Is I invent it, and then Pyrex comes to me and is like, "We need this, and we're gonna put it on every shelf, and we're gonna pay you $1 a unit." It's like, wow, this is amazing. I'm gonna make $150,000 every month from Pyrex, but that's not really how it goes.
Yeah, I mean it's a whatever. Everybody's story is different. I mean that's all there is to it. I would say to your point, right? It's usually the hard way, and I think that's just part of life, right? But you know what? I mean, you might be surprised. I mean, if you've got a patent, you might knock on some of those doors. The hard part is distribution.
Yeah.
It's getting real estate on shelves, and because it's people. I mean, it's just so competitive.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact of the matter is if you could find somebody that has the real estate who's be willing to partner with you, that might be a really fantastic way to go.
I see. So
And
it's like trading out some of Pyrex's existing real estate on whatever Costco or Walmart shelves or Kroger or, Giant Eagle. Instead of me knocking them out, it's them knocking one of their own pieces out and exchanging
well,
it.
and so here's what I think could be interesting is for instance, if you did something around June and July when college kids are going back to school, it might be something that they might be interested in, or it might be
Mm,
gift type stuff at Christmas. So they might be willing to do like some end caps, or some of the displays that sit in the aisle next to it.
mm,
And then if they sell, they might just give Pyrex or whoever more space. But to your point earlier, I think that they're probably concerned about working with a small company that couldn't fulfill orders if it took off, right? Because
yeah.
that's the big problem. And part of that, by the way, is during COVID, we couldn't have we didn't have product. I mean,
Mm,
it was sitting off the coast of California on those tankers they wouldn't let into port.
mm,
And we were worried that if we can't get product on the shelf, that we might have to pay a fine or something, because
yeah.
that's part of the deal. You're kind of renting that space to some degree. They're not going to lose. That is, they anticipate a certain amount of sales, and if you don't hit that, you're out of there because they need to make their money and pay for their business.
Mm,
So
interesting.
yeah, I
So
think there's a couple of ways to look at it.
So you get this kind of success, this win, if you will, this relationship and arrangement that seems like it's working. How much time is that taking you to manage that relationship, or is this something that is kind of passive? There's no real passive business, but semi-passive.
Yeah, I mean I probably on any given week I'm putting in my stat guard business here, especially with the new one with Linux and everything, 20 hours.
Okay, so
So it's
that's active. That's
yeah. I
quite
mean,
active.
I'm constantly reaching out, trying to get just get distributors to go look at the new one, reach out to facilities management companies, to drive the traffic to the stores and things like that. We've got, we're doing ads and all kinds of things. I'm going to trade shows, you name it. I tell you, when you think about it, right? What are the odds of getting on a retail shelf like this? Very slim.
Yeah.
So we're doing everything we can to drive traffic to the stores to keep that relationship because it's just means so much.
Hmm. Yeah, and you said you're also selling through Amazon.
Yeah, we've got a different variation on Amazon, but it's yeah.
Interesting. So, what about that company? Do they still make a portion of your? Are they still like a partner if you're not selling to and through Home Depot? How's that work?
Yeah. So they basically will handle all of the manufacturing, and then if we land more stores, that's kind of up to me. They focus on HD and Lowe's, but for instance, the conversations we're having with Ace and so on, I teed all that up and got those relationships started and that kind of thing. They've got a really big business running, in just those two stores. So they're happy to to ship to other locations, that kind of stuff. But they're not out there beating the bushes. That's kind of my job.
Mm. Now, have you experienced anyone like like patent infringing on your kind of technology? Has that been something you've had to like?
A little bit, yeah, and not much though. I mean, I'm grateful. We've had a little bit of that, but not much.
Yeah, because I looked on Amazon and I see something that looks similar. I don't know. Maybe I can share my screen and you can tell me. I mean, is this in the realm? Is this something you would go after right here?
Um, no, that's yeah, that's a different guard. I have I don't like to disparage other products, but I've purchased that one.
Okay, all
Just
right. So you know about it. Yeah, it's just
it's
it looks it looks similar,
it's
but
kind of
sort of
flimsy.
somewhat different. Yeah,
It's a little flimsy. So anyway, I'm not worried about it.
that's good, man. So so tell me, how did you get involved in all these other kind of projects?
I it's funny. I really think that when I joined my mastermind group, Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind, I just started hanging out with some guys that just had a whole different skill set, different views on how to live life and how to make money, and different ways to invest money and things like that. So um, yeah, I think I've just started to open up a whole new world to me. I didn't really, I had never thought about doing any real estate investing and things like that. But I thought, you know what, I've watched a few guys in my group do pretty well with it,
Hmm.
and of course some of them didn't, and I learned from their mistakes and learned from the a few of the hiccups, that kind of stuff, and
Yeah,
so yeah, I just decided to dip my toe in the water a few years ago in the real estate, and did a couple of flips, and in fact I partnered with a guy and just loaned some money so he could do the flip, and then made it just a percentage off of that, and then yeah, just recently we bought a home that's zoned for three houses, so we're
mm,
just going to scrape it and build three there. So um, yeah, I think it's you just kind of start thinking like the people you hang out with, and yeah, I would credit that group.
mm. And do you feel like the business is sort of like it's so focused on that one product and that one invention that maybe like the market, like I don't know, you tell me, like can this become a 250 million, $500 million business, or is it like, hey, this kind of has a cap? It's like it's already in Lowe's and Home Depot, right?
Yeah,
Like, and eventually we'll sort of hit like market saturation that if someone needs this product, they'll get it. Like, so is that why you're thinking like take the money and go out into other endeavors?
it's funny. The I think I made the mistake many times in life in assuming the potential book of business was a certain amount,
Hmm.
and it's amazing. I mean, Home Depot and Lowe's obviously are the most popular, but if you consider like Do It Best and True Value just merged,
Hmm.
and of course Ace,
Yeah.
you've got Menards. I mean, you've got
Oh yeah.
so
Menards.
many
Yeah.
different hardware stores and hardware chains. And then independently mom and pop shops. So in all reality, I'm in 3,700 stores. There's probably another 10,000 that I could get into,
Got it.
and then if you think about going into other countries too, right? It's
Other
we've
countries. Yeah.
I've sold stat guards in, man, I'm thinking probably 10 countries, and so it's fascinating. So we're hoping our new partnership with Lennox will open those doors in other countries too.
Mm. Yeah, the reason I ask is just because I know, there's kind of two different schools of thought with business, right? Like, focus on my business and like, this is the single most profitable thing that I can do, and let me sell out on it for the next 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. Or I peel money off of this business and I invest it into other projects and endeavors and you know, things like real estate or like the stock market or,
Sure.
what, you know, storage units or something like that. And
Yeah, yeah.
I just kind of was wondering if you thought that the business is somewhat like, not to say limited, but it's like it has a ceiling because I have one
Oh,
product
sure. I mean,
and
yeah, there's definitely a ceiling, right? I don't think we found it, but I would imagine, yep, there's probably a ceiling, and we'll probably find it in the next 5 years.
yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but clearly, diversification is never a bad thing, right? Like if you can, take some of your burn rate down because you have passive
sure.
investments and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And And here's a funny thing too is uh, part of the discussions that we have in ISI is this idea of just diversification and so on. So part of the money that I could have taken to put in my retirement account and so on, I'm rethinking that, right?
Mm,
Because you look at the value of the dollar in the last 5 years. I mean, if you've made, it's down 25%,
right.
in just inflation.
Well,
So,
that's if you believe their numbers. If you don't
right,
believe their numbers, like, the
yeah,
trope is like if you buy a house and if you bought a house I bought a house in 2017 and I paid $113,000 for it. And now
yeah,
Zillow tells me it's worth like $260,000. So
right,
like
yeah,
you can't get there at like 2 and 7 and 8%. That's like,
I know
100% plus in inflation of an asset category.
exactly. So I just feel like it's, if you're investing in your Roth IRA or whatever else, and then you consider inflation, that's a tough pill to swallow. So now I'm like, well, how can I take? I'm not taking any money out. I'm gonna leave it there, but I'm gonna try to find other ways to generate revenue for long term. And so we might even keep these homes in Gallatin and just rent them out. I don't know. We're just looking at all the the details and crunching the numbers there. But I think in general, how do you diversify? And right now it's like the financial world is a wild west. It's nuts.
Mhm. Interesting. You said you're writing a book right now?
Yeah. So it's kind of neat. I'm just by nature incredibly passionate about being a dad and just
Mm,
men in general. And I think that everything rises and falls on men. If men love and lead, with nobility and clarity and kindness, everybody wins. But when men falter, right? When men become takers, when men become insecure, when men become useless, everybody loses. And so I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I said, there's a few things in this life we're never going to hear somebody say. One of them is, "Gee, I wish I couldn't play the piano." Another one is, "Gee, I wish I didn't finish my college degree." And I think the other one that probably hits home for a lot of people is, "Gee, I wish my dad didn't lead with such kindness, conviction, and clarity."
mhm. True. Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Just the opposite's true. It's probably the deepest ache in most people's hearts. In fact, I would say that people listening right now would say, I would trade anything if I had a dad that showed up, a
Mhm.
dad that raised me, not just provided, but raised me,
Mhm.
that poured into my life, that saw the riches that God put in me and called them out and validated those things and got behind me and lifted me up, right? And just the opposite is what so many experience. And it's a vacancy, whether the dad disappeared or he's there, but he's not there, or he's, somehow neglectful or abusive, right? It's a travesty. And so I'm really passionate about that. And I think I come at this from a bit of a I'd say philosophical, spiritual, and probably a psychological perspective, in the book, largely talking about authenticity and how that's misunderstood, identity, how that's misunderstood. And I'm not talking politically, by the way. I'm talking just hardcore psychology, the way we were wired, and then this idea of grit and resilience, and what's the difference, between those things, and how do you actually establish those in your life, as opposed to, kind of just living out of fear and anxiety and desperation.
Mm. Interesting. What was there something that happened or a spark that made you think like I should write this book?
Not really. It's been on my mind for a long time. It was interesting. My dad in Minnesota. I remember my junior year in high school. I wrote. My English teacher walked in and he said, "Hey, if you want to write a," he goes, "We're going to take 10 minutes. We're going to write for 10 minutes an essay about your dad, and if you want me to submit this to the, I don't know what it was, some Minneapolis news station, KCCO or something like that, for a contest, just put a check mark at the top." So I'm like, I wrote something about my dad. I put a check mark at the top, and a few months later, my dad gets a letter and says that he is, in the top 10 in the whole state of Minnesota for Father of the Year.
Father of the Year. Wow.
And he went through, I don't even know. I mean, it was like 6 months of interviews. They drove from Minneapolis to 100 miles to go interview him. And, he ended up winning third place, and we got to go down and be on TV and the whole 9 yards.
What criteria were they judging him by? What was the criteria by which you're the best father?
Well, it was the National Center for Fathering is the group that actually did this. Yeah, it wasn't it was not actually the TV station. And but it was, I mean, they kind of ran him through the gauntlet. And so here's what I think pushed him over the edge to get, bronze, as it were, is he was real about, his his struggles as a human being. He wasn't like, I'm some hero. It was more like, hey, I'm getting up every morning. I tell my kids I love them. I support them. I listen to them. We pray together every single day, and I'm transparent about the fact that I can be a total, douchebag. And so I think they just really appreciated that he was being real. And so I think from then on, to answer your question, that was probably a bit of a spark, right? But something that's authentic to my nature is I really, really care about men in general and how they win and thrive. And after being a dad for 20 years, my son Parker is 20. I mean, it's been one of the hardest things I've ever done, but one of the most rewarding, as well. It's humbling, right? Because Parker's a stud. I'm kind of an overweight 51-year-old who's, stumbling forward, and kid's a beast, but it's the honor of my life to be his dad. Like he's a rock star, and he's real. And we talk about, that our struggles and all the stuff. And so the book is, so let me back up. I do some coursework and teaching and speaking with my friend, Dr. Andy Garrett, who's a clinical psychologist. So a lot of what's in the book is stuff I've learned from Dr. Andy, because it's just, really helpful, common sense stuff.
What are some of the things that, I know the book's in progress, but what are some of the kind of takeaways that you're trying to get people to come up with after the end of the book?
Well, do you mind if I jump into the deep end of the pool?
Sure.
So I'll kind of start with the heart here. So I remember Dr. Andy introduced me to a quote a few years ago. It was Benjamin Disraeli, former PM of England back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, and it's really the quote that I live by, like my mission. He says, the greatest good you can do for another is not to share with him your riches, but to reveal to him his own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, well, at face value, right? Everybody who hears that probably is like, wow, what would it look like for someone just to see me, and to start naming those things in me that are different from the person next to me, and to see the richness that God wove into me, and to say, David, man, that's good. I hope you do more of that tomorrow. Like I saw you showing up in that way today, or, when you did these things or said these things, I could tell that came from a deep place. And no, that's great. Like that really landed well. And so I think that's kind of the umbrella. And then, I dive into stuff like, for instance, I was speaking in front of a group recently, and I asked them, it was a bunch of business owners at the Rotary Club, and I said, does anybody know where we get the word authenticity from? And of course, everybody kind of, stared at the floor and didn't have a clue. Well, it comes from the word author. And so I'm not going to tell anybody what they need to believe about God, but there's some things that we have to admit, right? I didn't make me. We didn't make us. I didn't choose my skin color, which is a popular one, right? I didn't choose my eye color, my taste buds. I didn't choose what time I was born, what family I was born into. I didn't choose my DNA, and here's the funny thing. We don't choose our own personalities.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we know that's true? Do you have any kids?
No, not yet.
So, well, hopefully one day you will, but you'll get what I'm saying here. When your child's born and they come out of the gate, you can sense, their little essence, right? Their spirit is so unique.
Mm-hmm.
And within weeks and months, you're like, this is a much different person than me.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're just so unique. Well, then if another brother or sister comes along, again, they're so unique.
Mhm.
They're so different. And they get into that 2 and 3 and 4, and everything about them is so different. 5, 6, and 7, and 8, and 10, and 12, whatever. It's like, holy smokes, they're different. But here's the funny thing. Little kids, when they're growing up, they're not really, I say this, tongue in cheek, but they're not very sophisticated like we are, right? Thinking about identity and authenticity and all the stuff. They're just being themselves.
Mhm.
And until what? Until when? Well, until life slaps them around, right? They get hurt, they get teased or bullied or marginalized in some way, and they start kind of pulling back. They walk into a room and they realize, if I do certain things I get an applause. If I do walk into a room and I do certain things I get laughed at or teased or punched or whatever, right? It's like, so you start to kind of play a role based on what works and what doesn't.
Mhm.
And then you've probably heard the term self-actualization, when teenagers start acting the fool and getting all rebellious. Well, that's pretty normal stuff, because they're starting to kind of stand on their own 2 feet. They don't want somebody pushing them around. Most people, though, don't go through that stage of identifying, right? The word identity, identifying all of those things that make them them. And it's practical. It's a little bit complex, but it's quite practical to identify those things so you have an identity.
Mhm.
And um, so we often run into life in our teens and 20s and 30s, for that matter, and we're searching for an identity, especially men, right? We want to accomplish a bunch of things so that we're not the biggest loser in the room, and people think we're a somebody, or at least not a nobody.
Mhm.
And it's kind of tragic, because we tend to hit some of these accomplishments and all this kind of stuff, and some of those things are good, but it doesn't solve that question. And it's like, this idea of, what is it that brings me fulfillment when I act in alignment with who God made me to be, and I don't try to act like my brother or Joe Rogan or some other rascal. I tend to get feedback. In fact, Dr. Andy calls it the virtuous loop. When you have identified who you are on a granular level and you start operating in that capacity, you get to see your dent in the universe, right? It looks like you.
Mm.
So I've got a David Osk shaped dent. Well, what happens? I get the joy of seeing my impact, which thus reinforces who I am. The joy of me being me, reinforces that. And I think most people, and I did this for decades, kind of walk around with a big question mark. And it's, you feel it, and so does everybody else around you. You start saying yes to things that drain your energy, and you start, you know, yeah, just living a life that doesn't feel like it's yours. So the book is a little philosophical. I'm trying to be, not too heady in it. And I'm probably going to do a workbook with it so they can do a little homework and start identifying some of these things. But I really want dads to understand, what does identity mean? What does authenticity mean? And how do I, uh, you know, lay hold of those things in order to give something to my son, right? Help him to raise him into who God made him to be. Because you can't give away something you don't have.
Mm.
And quite often, we lay a bunch of crap on our sons, and I've been guilty of this. Just work more, do more, hustle culture, bull crap, and they get pretty stressed out just like me.
Mm.
So it's, bigger is not better, better is better.
Mm.
And so yeah, I'm pretty excited about the practical side of that, and then I think there's some stuff in there that's going to open some men's hearts, to be willing just to explore those things in them, because they're made of awesome, and they need to identify that stuff.
Mm. Sounds like a lot of it starts with trying to identify who you are. Like, what is your identity? Um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I think that's always an interesting thing. Is I've heard this a lot with like weight loss or exercise or habits. If you can begin to identify as a person who does this, and I even catch myself doing it, it's like, oh, I'm not a morning person. It's like, well, you've already, pre-selected yourself as not a morning person. Like, what if you
yeah,
just began to identify as a morning person? Or you
yeah,
began to identify as the type of person who doesn't get the donut, right? Like, and now that's always sort of been my identity, is like fit, healthy. I try to exercise, played soccer in college, ran track, that whole thing.
yeah,
But like it's part of my identity that if there's like donuts out, like I'm not like, oh, I need one. It's like, no, I am a type of person that I don't want other people to see me eating a donut. So I don't do that. But I always
You
think,
know what I'm doing, by the way?
what-
So that's been a problem for me. I've been, my health has been an issue, and that's been something I've just struggled with. Right, there's some kind of block there. So I'm on day 3 of a water fast because I've decided I'm doing 7 days, and then I'm going to do one meal a day and then 2 meals a day week 3.
whoa,
I'm choosing to do something really, really
oh
hard
yeah, you're
because,
diving in.
and it's really because I need to, you know, I guess it's an identity, and it is an identity thing, but it's also a habit, and I've got to, it's just that we whatever, we've all got that little whiny baby in us that wants what we want when we want it, and I got to tell that dude to shut his mouth right now. So
Mhm.
I'm going in hard to, yeah, to just try to shake the tree a little bit. And this has been a hard day, honestly. I feel pretty raw.
Yeah. Well, interesting. I've gotten to 3 days on a water fast before. I've never gone past that. So I've what I experienced was it was just kinda like this, but it never went like and just ramped straight up. Like it was just like, "This stinks. This is okay. This stinks. This is okay." So it never ramped up to like 12, 15, 20 in terms of intensity. That's at least my experience, yours may be different.
Yeah, yeah. Yesterday was that's funny. Yesterday afternoon was really hard, about 4 o'clock, and then about 2 o'clock today, I had about an hour where like I just had to go like glue myself to a chair because I wanted to go eat so bad. And I went and got some. I'm doing bone broth,
Yeah.
so I went and got some bone broth and put some more electrolytes in it. And about an hour later, I was fine. But it's no picnic.
Well, the ketones should be flowing, right?
There's no question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think James Clear would tell you, don't do it that way. Like, make tiny little habit changes. Don't go full send. But hey, if it works and it's something that you need to do and feel like doing, that's
I
amazing.
just felt like, yeah, it was. I'll be honest. I'm with you, and I think he's probably right. I just felt like it's something I had to do. So yeah.
So, kind of to shift topics, talk to me maybe just a little bit about your singing career, because that's sort of like, is that like your primary job or your primary thing that you've done over your life? I mean,
You
and
know,
how do you categorize that? Are you like
yeah.
are you a professional singer? Like, what do you even talk about when you say that?
Yep, yep. So, yeah, so I'm a professional. I have never done it for a living, and I moved to Nashville, and I saw so many musicians just eking by, and I'm not that guy. I don't want to, even early on, I'm like, I'm not going to live in some nasty apartment and say yes to everything, and so I wanted income security, and of course, you have kids and so on. You need to man up a little bit, and but here's the cool thing. Over the years, I've recorded 3 records, and I've got to sing with and back up for so many of the country stars and gospel singers and some of the greats. And it's been super fun. I've sung at the Schermerhorn Symphony Center many times. I've sung in other countries, and in fact, I've got a non-disclosure agreement on my wall with a famous golf course that I can't mention online that I've
Mm-hmm.
done 4 concerts at.
Oh,
And so, as a golfer and a vocalist, to stand in that place a few times was, like a total pipe dream. And so, yeah, it's I'm so grateful. I'm actually I'm recording a full Italian version of Open Arms. In fact, Jonathan Cain, the guy that wrote Open Arms for Journey, lives here in town. I'm hoping to get a copy to him and get a little comment or something.
yeah.
He's a real nice guy, and so I'm grateful. I get to do some really fun events, and at the same time, it's quite often, for a lot of people, not everybody, but when music becomes your job and it becomes, you have to do it, it really kind of it can, suck the life out of it.
Yeah.
And
I think it's
so
true
I'm
with
thankful.
everything, whether that be sport or music or
Yeah.
your art. Um,
Yep. Yep.
and
So
most of what you're doing is not usually that thing. Like, even if you become a professional like singer or musician, like 90 out of 100 moments are traveling to the gig, setting up for the gig, booking the gig, leaving the gig. Like, you're only doing the thing for a very short period of time.
Well, and my friend Chad Jeffers is on tour full time with Carrie Underwood for the last, I don't know, 15 years I think. And it's funny because I talk to him, I mean, probably every other day. And when he's in the busy season, right? He's sitting in a hotel or an airport somewhere, or I mean, it's a lot of waiting.
Mhm.
And he's don't get me wrong, he's had some unbelievable experiences, but at the same time, you're right. It's 75% standing around.
Mm. So you said that you had some natural talent for singing as a kid. Now, tell me
Yeah,
this, is singing something that you either got it or you don't? Like everything, you can get better. I'm not saying you can't
yeah,
improve. I could become a better singer, but,
sure.
like, how relative is that to your kinda inbuilt skill set?
I would say that for me personally, and I would say for most people who are professional, they're they probably got 80% of
Okay.
it handed to them,
And
and you got
what
to.
is that? What are they getting handed to them? That maybe this is a stupid question.
Well, I mean, I guess it's just the ability. I mean, it's literally I can if you look at sports, I can just run faster. I mean, it's you have an ability to make placement in your throat. I mean, for instance, your voice and my voice, even speaking, sound differently, right?
Mhm.
So some people's sound is just more palatable than others.
Okay. So
So
what?
it
They're
depends
hitting
on where.
hitting better frequencies for our ears?
Well, I mean, I guess it's tonality and everything else. So it's a sound that is unique to that person. It's like a signature that comes out, and it's yes, there's frequency and decibels and all that kind of thing, but there's also just the flavor of the person that's singing, and it's everything from their nasal passages to their throat to their tongue to their teeth to their cheeks. It's amazing how everybody's anatomically so different, and whatever comes out is. I mean, my wife will never sound like Celine Dion. She could take voice lessons for 10 million years, and she will never ever sound like Celine Dion.
Mhm.
So I would say that 80% is given to someone who has professional ability, and then they work really hard to kind of get to that top tier. Whereas there are some people that are just completely tone deaf and don't have an ability. So it's a yeah, I mean, and I would say that on a spectrum, if you have somebody who's a 5 out of 10, they could probably get to a 7. But if you're a 3, I'll be honest, that's almost like a 2. Like there's no such thing as a 3. It's like you're probably going to have a really hard time singing,
Mm.
and you just we're not given that ability. So
Mm. What kinda things are people doing to get better at singing?
yeah, so it's fascinating all the. I mean, I remember when I was in college, the vocal techniques then were great, super helpful. But there's a lot of really interesting things that are in tools. For instance, like there's a literally a bottle with a straw on it that has it's small, has push air out, and it's such a small capacity that it's creating back pressure in your throat,
Mhm.
which kind of gently expands your vocal folds. Technically, is what they're called, a vocal fold. And um, so there's little things like that are out. There's different exercises, that you've probably heard people doing lip trills, all the stuff like that, right? They do all these different weird exercises,
Hmm.
and there's a bunch of weird exercises out there that I'll spare you from that are really helpful.
Mm.
And there's a lot of science behind those things where you can extend and expand your vocal folds, meaning you can sing higher and lower,
I see.
and kind of massage those two folds together in a way that it's like it's warming up your voice and working it without being able to harm and stretch. Because if you sing incorrectly, it's like running incorrectly. You can literally pull muscles in your throat and ruin your vocal folds.
Mm. So, like, riddle me this, like, the most famous, like, people for singing, like, I don't even know who you'd probably know better than I, but, like, I'm thinking pop singers, I'm thinking, like, Mariah
Yeah,
Carey, they said she was amazing.
sure.
I don't know,
Yeah, yeah.
she sounds good, of course, to me, but I don't know if I have the chops to be able to tell you, "Oh, Mariah Carey is so much better of a singer than, Taylor Swift," and then Ariana's better than Taylor Swift, like, I don't really know if I can tell, like, maybe, like,
Well,
talk to me about, like, how those levels, like, work, and what are the things that you would be listening for as, like, a professional to say, like, "Oh,
so
this is the best female or male singer I've ever heard.
Right. Yeah. And it's such a great question. So here's what's really fascinating. There's this idea of what is in demand, meaning what's marketable, versus, you know, who is technically a better singer. So if you've got a room and you had, um, CeCe Winans and Whitney Houston and Taylor Swift and Pink and um, Kelly Pickler and, Kelly Clarkson or, whatever, there would be a couple of people in that room, regardless of their fame and money, that every one of those singers would kind of bow down to. And for instance, when Andrea Bocelli was here, do you know who he is? The Italian vocalist who's blind.
I'm not sure.
He's probably, I mean, he's the premier tenor in the world right now.
Okay.
The most well known. He would even say there's probably better singers than him. But so last year when Bocelli was here, I was asked to sing backup for him at Bridgestone Arena. It was funny, I couldn't do it. I actually had another gig that night. But the night before, I actually got to go to the private screening of the movie that he made with a bunch of different artists.
Okay.
So we were in South Nashville. We're in this really swanky theater that's, it's like every seat has its own little lamp. I mean, it's just this really cool place. You feel like you're in like 1955 and this, anyway, it was super cool. But so I've got everybody from Amy Grant to Vince Gill to Kathy Lee Gifford to the governor to, all kinds of, artists and billionaires in that room, right? And they're pretty famous.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, Bocelli walks in, and they stand up like the president just came into the room. And why? Because he's Andrea Bocelli, and he can sing his face off. And he can sing songs that they can't sing, right? That he can sing, Puccini's Nessun Dorma, and I got to hear him do that about 2 months ago at Belmont's Fisher Center. And it's this quintessential song that kind of Pavarotti made famous that you hear at the end of movies, Vincero, just this huge, Italian aria. And so when he walks in, everybody in that room who's a great singer, a great artist, well-known, they know that he is a premier vocalist. That doesn't take away from their business, and their sales or anything else, because the art that they're putting out is beautiful and it's in demand. I mean, Amy Grant, for that matter, I've had the pleasure of singing with her a few times, and she would say, right, oh my gosh, I'm not, one of the best vocalists, but she sold 20 million records and, is married to Vince Gill, and, he's, who knows how many records Vince has sold. But I think both of them would say, we have a nice gift, right? We both have really nice voices. They play guitar really well, but at the same time, they would credit other people as more talented. And I think part of that's humility, but part of it is like, you know what? I get it. Like there are some people out there that when they stand up and sing, the room changes. But that doesn't really take away from, what others are doing, right? Because it's beautiful, it's marketable, it's art.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody is saying that Taylor Swift is the best singer of all time. Like, I don't think many people are really making that argument. But you could easily make the argument she's the best artist of all time, right?
Yeah, great entertainer, right? I mean, catchy songs. I mean, the music, like regardless of her voice, the song stays in your mind, right? You get out of your car and you shut the door, and you're still da 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 da. You don't even care what the lyrics are, but it's she creates melodies that stick, and that's the definition of a hit song, right? It stays with you.
So what is this Andrea Bocelli doing that, like you said, other artists can't sing this song? Like what are the things in that are not able to be done by another less talented singer?
Yeah, so classical singers can sing what Bocelli sings, but again, his tone is warm and just so soothing, right? It's a different body singing it, a different signature. But most other, country or pop artists, they can't go low like he can. They can't go as high as he can.
It's range. It's a little bit of range.
It's a range thing. And then, there's a classical way of singing that takes years and years of practice, and I can fake it. I've taken some classical, right? But if you want to sing an Italian aria, correctly, you need to sing it classically, and it's hard to do that. It takes a lot of practice.
Yeah, this Bocelli is not a very big guy. I don't know why. I just thought that he would have like a really
Well, yeah,
big
because
chest.
Pavarotti was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate you so much. This was fun. I know you've had a handful of these today, and also you're on a 3-day fast with a couple to go. So I'll let you get to it, man. Get to your family and your evening. But where can people
Awesome.
find you? Find the product if they're in Home Depot or Lowe's. It's on shelves, right?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. It's been a great time. You're a great host. Yeah, I mean, if you need a thermostat guard, the Stat Guard Plus is in Home Depot and Lowe's. If you want our latest version, if you're a contractor, you can go to HD Supply or Granger. I've got the Lockbox Pro. And you know what? I would say this: if you want to get a hold of me for some reason, go to my music website right now. It's just davidaskmusic.com, David ASK Music, and send me a message, and I'll do my best to help you out.
When do you think the book will be out?
Well, we're pitching it to our first publisher here in a couple of weeks. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm hoping by summer.
Yeah. Even if you don't get a publisher, will you go direct to Amazon or something like that?
Yeah. I've actually already got one offer, so
Yeah.
I think we'll get it published. But
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm just honestly, we might even just roll with that. But I don't know what else is out there, right? So I've not done this before. So like everything else, we're just knocking on doors and putting the pieces together.
Sweet. Thank you, man. Really appreciate you.
You got it. Thanks for
Have a
having
good
me.
night.